Looking for your next great hire but short on time? You just need the right tools, smarter tools. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 job boards with just one click. Then they actively look for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Right now, our listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus Sirius XM, ESPN Radio, Channel 80. Number to call up as always is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. It's time for some Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Lots of stuff to get into. This is the beginning of Super Bowl week. The Super Bowl 52 in Minneapolis, will be this Sunday evening. This is the week of the Super Bowl, so we will definitely, unquestionably, get into that throughout this show, throughout every single show this week. Feel free to call up anytime you want to talk about Super Bowl 52. We're not running from that, but we also have a lot of stuff to get into as well. We've got a symbol on the Cleveland Indians uniform that will be removed. Obviously, the Native American community, a lot of folks in that community are going to be happy about that. We'll get your thoughts about all of that, but clearly we all know what the story is. We all know what the story is today, and it's what's been going on in Michigan State, and it's unfortunate that we have to get into a story like this, but it's necessary. It's necessary. And we got to stay on point and really, really get down and dirty about what exactly is it that we're talking about here. We're talking about a situation. First of all, let's get one thing out of the way first, and it's very, very important. When we think about Larry Nassar, the former gymnastics coach at Michigan State University, that was also working for USA Olympics, this guy that was recently sentenced to 40 to 175 years in jail, that's going on top of the 60 years that he was sentenced to for child pornography. This is a man that's going to spend the rest of his natural, pathetic, disgusting life in prison behind bars. I would say no drop the soap, but you know what? This is Disney Airwaves, so we ain't going to go there. But, Lord, this man is going to get what's coming to him. We don't even have to think about him. Matter of fact, I don't know if he'll survive a year. If you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, if you had a problem listening to 4 days of testimony from the victims that you violated over the course of 20 years, if you got a problem listening to victims expressing themselves verbally and you're going to write a letter to a judge talking about you can't take that, which Larry Nassar did, could you imagine how difficult incarceration is going to be for him? Could you imagine that dude and what these fellas in jail are going to do to him? Listen, again, these are Walt Disney Airwaves. So we want to be careful in terms of not being too explicit. But we all understand what this man is in for. And we also understand that he will deserve it. Having said all of that, when we take it steps further and we delve deeper into this as a sports network, we have to really, really talk about what's going on here. We're not talking about this because of a gymnastics coach. If that was all there was to this story, we'd mention it. We wouldn't lead the show with it. It wouldn't permeate our airwaves. We wouldn't be going on and on about it. We will not, through Outside the Lines and others, and by the way, Outside the Lines has done a sensational job on this story, but we wouldn't be, leading the pack in terms of talking about a story of this nature. If it was just about gymnastics or track or whatever the case may be, let's call it what it is. When we talk about a systemic problem that exists at Michigan State University, and we get into the issue of sexual assault, and you got football and basketball players involved, which had nothing to do with Larry Nassar, by the way, now you got a bigger problem. And here's how Larry Nassar spearheaded the whole thing. Because what you're thinking about is from an institutional standpoint, how is this man allowed to get away with all of this spanning 20 years? How could the university president not know? How could the board of regents not know? How could the athletic director not know? There's a reason that in the last few days, the president resigned and the athletic director has retired. There's a reason that is happening. I'm talking about President Luana Simon and athletic director Mark Hollis. They're gone. Why? They will proclaim their innocence until the cows come home. Who really believes them at this particular moment in time? Who really believes that they have no culpability? Who really believes that they were oblivious and ignorant to what was going on? Who really believes that? The answer is pretty much no one. There still needs to be accountability, and in order for accountability to take place, the first order of business is to have an account of exactly what transpired. We understand that, as my colleague Jay Billis pointed out on Outside the Lines and SportsCenter and various other programs right here on ESPN. We get all of that. But you know why there's an insatiable appetite for this? You know why there's this insatiable appetite to find out what the hell went on? Because you're trying to find out who knew. That's why the Attorney General, who happens to be running for governor, down in the polls by about 7 points, by the way, right now. But that's why you got an Attorney General that's got his fingers all over this right now, looking to hold folks accountable. That's why you've got everybody covering their behinds. That's why you've got everybody at Michigan State right now looking at that, looking around with raised eyebrows, wondering who's going to be the next to fall. That's why you had a press conference with Mark D'Antonio, head football coach at Michigan State, who since he arrived in 2007 has had more than 16 cases of football players being accused of something. Suddenly we hear about an assistant coach or a student assistant who was a former player on Tom Izzo's basketball squad. Now his past has come up. And ultimately what we have is a situation where not only is Mark D'Antonio on the hot seat, but now folks are looking in the direction of Tom Izzo. And in the interest of full disclosure, as I revealed on First Take this morning, it's a tough story for me personally. I have a pretty damn good relationship with Coach Tom Izzo. He and I speak quite frequently. Not every day, not every week, but we speak enough throughout the years. He's somebody that I have profound respect for. I've been on the record stating, hey, if I had a son, I'd want him playing for Tom Izzo because he's hard-nosed. He could coach his behind off, and he goes after it. No question about it. The discipline that he instills, et cetera, et cetera. But now, this is propped up. Tom Izzo and I have communicated. He cannot talk about this at all. He won't talk about it at all. No doubt due to legal counsel as much as anything else. We get it because you're talking about the possibility of civil suits against Michigan State University in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars. Every I's got to be dotted. Every T's got to be crossed. Every sentence you've got to be careful. I totally understand. But the story's not going away. Addressing the issue at some point is going to be inescapable. I totally understand the position that Tom Izzo has to take at this particular juncture because he's being advised by legal counsel. Boo Boo the Fool can see that. But the real question here is how much accountability did Coach Mark D'Antonio and Tom Izzo have in terms of what they knew, what they didn't know, what, if any, role they played at all in influencing the university to not pursue things against the student athlete more rigorously? In the aftermath of Penn State and the Jerry Sandusky scandal, where you had people calling for the death penalty, and Joe Paterno ultimately loses his job, and the statue of Joe Paterno being removed, and all of this other stuff before he passed away, God rest his soul. In the aftermath of all of that, that is how people are looking at Michigan State right now. Because whether Tom Izzo And to a lesser degree, Mark D'Antonio, meaning lesser in terms of name cachet, in terms of what they had to do with this stuff still needs to be found out. But even without knowing all the facts, you still got people calling for Tom Izzo's head because he's the face of the university. Just like Joe Paterno was the face of Penn State. There is a difference between the two situations at this particular juncture. And I'd like to highlight that for y'all. But make no mistake about it. Everybody at Michigan State, from an administrative perspective, from an authoritative perspective, meaning those in the administration, those in position of authority, they are in a world of trouble because guess what? When the president goes down and the athletic director goes down, the one message that is undeniable is that nobody is safe. Nobody is safe. And considering what happened to these girls, not women, girls, some as young as 6 and 8 years old, considering what has happened, how can we blame anybody for putting everybody at Michigan State on a hot seat right now? This is the Stephen A. Smith Show. Needless to say, I'm just getting started. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Don't touch that dial. I got a whole lot more to get into, and I will in a moment.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Before I even get into the Indian situation and, the Cleveland Indians dropping the divisive and hotly debated Chief Wahoo logo. Before I get into it being removed from the Cleveland Indians uniform for next year, I want to go back to what I was saying about Michigan State and the difference potentially between Tom Izzo and Mark D'Antonio and Joe Paterno. When the whole Joe Paterno situation took place, here's why I was absolutely on fire about that particular situation. Jerry Sandusky, another despicable human being who deserves to be in jail for the rest of his life, was sodomizing people. He was a former football coach who ultimately was no longer coaching for the program, but was still associated with the university, left to have an office on campus, and essentially was allowed to use his association with the football program to recruit young boys when it had already been recognized that he was molesting them. You understand what I'm saying? In the case of Tom Izzo and Mark D'Antonio, we don't know what they knew. If you look at the multitude of cases that involve the football program with Mark D'Antonio, you hear about allegations and accusations. You also see that investigations took place and ultimately the cases were dropped. There was like 4 or 5 instances where the case was dropped. So the question does beg, what does a coach need to do? In one case where you had 3 different players that assaulted a young lady, they were thrown off the football team and out of the school, according to the report. Okay, so what is the coach supposed to do? I'm just asking these questions. In the case of Tom Izzo, we can talk about the Mateen Cleave situation where the Michigan State University did everything it could to try to quell the notoriety of the story. We could point to this assistant coach, Troy Walton, I believe his name was, who allegedly punched some girl in the face, and how he was still allowed to be a student coach on the bench, and then got himself in another incident as well. And according to the reports, they're saying, well, he lived with Tom Izzo for a little while. And how Tom Izzo was using words like he didn't recall what the situation was. All of those things are suspect, fair enough. But when you have people categorically denying something, and then you have somebody else saying, "Oh, well, excuse me, the charges were dropped," or what have you, that's it. One could argue. Compare that to Penn State. And there's more of a direct correlation to what happened with Penn State football than there is with what happened with Michigan State basketball or football, because Larry Nassar was in gymnastics. Even though those incidences that I mentioned involve student athletes. What I'm saying to you is this. Izzo and Mark D'Antonio are on the hot seat. Nobody's getting a pass here, and nobody should get a pass here. But whereas there's this insatiable appetite to find out what exactly has been going on. In the case of Jerry Sandusky, you already knew what he was. See, where Izzo, to me, who again, I've communicated with and have somewhat of a relationship with, where Izzo really gets on the hot seat is the fact that you're Tom Izzo. You have the power, one would argue. If Tom Izzo wants you gone from Michigan State, you don't think he can make that happen? Because for all intent and purposes, Tom Izzo is the Joe Paterno of Michigan State. So if somebody wants to make that argument, I don't think anybody can refute that. And there's no way in hell you're going to believe that the AD, Mark Hollis, knew things that Tom Izzo didn't know. Or that Mark D'Antonio didn't know. Because football brings in too much money for the football coach not to have clout. Michigan State was in a Final Four I'm talking about football a couple of years back. This program brings in money through that football program. There's no way you can convince anybody that the athletic director knew things that the coach didn't know, unless the coach said, I ain't want to know. And Tom Izzo's Tom Izzo. So in that regard, there's some explaining to do, which is why, even though Magic Johnson was late to the party, the Michigan State grad who brought a national championship to Michigan State years ago, even though he's a bit late to the party with the quote, he still gave it better late than never. And here was what Magic Johnson tweeted. If anyone was aware of the sexual assault happening to women on an MSU campus from the office of the president, board of trustees, athletic department, faculty, and campus police, and didn't say or do anything about it, they should be fired. Those are the words of Magic Johnson. He says, Cookie and I stand in support of the victims and their families as they embark on the road to recovery, and I support the movement to hold everyone involved accountable. This is Magic Johnson. He continues, the roles of the new president, board of trustees, athletic department, faculty, campus police, and students will be to work together to create new policies and procedures to ensure this never happens again. That's Magic Johnson. Outside the Lines reached out to him Friday. He was unavailable for comment. Listen to Tom Izzo talk about his former player, Travis Walton, and why Travis Walton stayed with Michigan State even after the allegations were levied against him. Listen to Tom Izzo.
In 2010, Travis Walton was charged with assault and battery for punching a female student in the face. There were witnesses. She was injured. Why was he allowed to continue with the coaching staff and be with the team while charges were pending?
Well, as I said before, we'll cooperate with any investigation and always have. We've done it before and we'll do it moving forward. And that's about all I'm going to say on it, that we did cooperate with everything.
She also asked him why Travis Walton left Michigan State. Listen to this question and answer.
Why did Travis leave the program in 2010?
I don't know what you mean. He graduated.
He was with your staff throughout 2010. An allegation came forward later that year that he and two of your players raped her. He then left the program later that year in 2010. Why?
To be honest with you, I don't remember why he left. I know he went to Europe to play. And as you know, I'll still say I'll cooperate with any investigation that's made. I did it then. I did it before. And I'm not going to answer any questions that aren't pertaining to either basketball or things that I am not going to talk about right now.
Here's the reality of the situation. That was Tisha Thompson for Outside the Lines asking those questions. There's no way around this. You can't blame Tom Izzo for not answering the questions because he's clearly being advised by legal counsel. Anything he says will be held against him and the university because there are civil lawsuits impending and possible criminal charges could potentially be pending. And anything that he says without question may be used against him. That part is fair. But there is no doubt that those answers are not satisfactory. There is no doubt that more needs to come out of the mouth of Tom Izzo. There is no doubt as to why that is. Not just because those direct questions were pertaining to one of his players. Not just because the Larry Nassar scandal seems to be evidence of a systemic issue that permeated throughout the Michigan State University campus, but also because he's Tom Izzo. This is not just some fly-by-night coach, ladies and gentlemen. This is a man that I revere and I respect, who was just inducted into the Hall of Fame more than a year ago, who is synonymous, is the absolute face of Michigan State athletics. Those lawyers better get together with Tom Izzo and figure out a way that he can answer some of these questions. Because when you are the face of an institution and folks have been assaulted, allegedly, especially of a sexual nature, somebody's going to have to answer for that. It's just that simple. 888-729-3776 says 888-SAY-ESPN. What level of culpability do you place on the shoulders of Mark D'Antonio and Tom Izzo in all of this? There are some people calling for the death penalty at Michigan State. Do you think that's too extreme? Lots to get into. Lots of answers that are required. I'm looking for them from you. Obviously, I have a few myself. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
37 minutes past hour number 1. Back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Just watch Tom Brady give a send-off, drop the mic. Patriots out. Let's go. He's ready. We all ready for Super Bowl 52. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. I have no doubt about that. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. And like I said before, getting back to the whole Michigan State story, it can't stop at Larry Nassar. One of the things that we got to do is make sure that we stop talking about, oh, my goodness, he assaulted women. It's despicable, and he was wrong, and he deserves to be in jail for the rest of his natural, disgusting, despicable life. There's no doubt about that. But, ladies and gentlemen, there's something even more poignant about that. As wrong as it was to do what he did, as egregious as it was, as evil as it was, ladies and gentlemen, it elevates to another level when you take into account the fact that he also did it to 6-year-old and 8-year-old girls. 6 years old, 8 years old. He did it to them too. Some contemplated suicide. One father committed suicide because initially he didn't believe his daughter and he was so ashamed when he found out the truth. And if you can point to a president and you can point to a professor like Sue Carter, interviewed by Bob Lee on Outside the Lines, who resigned because she felt that the president's attitude was so nonchalant and pragmatic and businesslike, talking about Luana Simon, and how she didn't seem to care. And if you're talking about something being as systemic as that, do you believe that that president ultimately put the weight of her influence down upon the athletic department? Or was it the other way around? See, these are the things we just don't know. But we got to find out. When lives have been this traumatically and detrimentally harmed, you got to find out. In my perfect world, I want to give my man Tom Izzo the benefit of the doubt. But when it involves these kind of crimes, nobody gets the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't mean you're guilty, but everything has to be looked at. Not only what you knew, but what you did about it. Everything has to be investigated. And I applaud the Attorney General, even though he's politicizing the situation because he's running for governor. He's behind in the polls. And if he gets his fingerprints on this and something profound comes out of it to his advantage, it could win him an election. We understand that. That doesn't make him wrong when he says he don't want to hear from some board of regents from Michigan State. He said they're the last people that should be giving anybody advice considering how they handled this situation. From the top on down, bodies have got to fall. It just looks too bad. Speaking of that woman, Sue Collins, the former MSU faculty rep. I thought her last name was Carter. It's Collins. I think it's Carter as opposed to Collins. I'm not sure though. But this is what she said as it pertains to why she resigned as a faculty rep. Listen to what she said.
You resigned as faculty rep. Why?
As I heard what happened last week and the reference to President Simon in the courtroom last Tuesday, and then the Board of Trustees' action on Friday with 8 members affirming her position as president, I spent some time deliberating and talking with colleagues over the weekend and crafted a statement which I shared with members of the Athletic Council, which I had chaired, and 8 members, 9 actually, joined in with me in saying that the university had lacked compassion and we were deeply sorry for what had happened. That prompted a call from President Simon. We spoke Monday afternoon and agreed, I think we both agreed that we were on very divergent paths. Her approach was quite legalistic. And although I'm a lawyer, I also thought that we were really lacking in compassion and real compassion, not just for the sorrow of what had happened, but the damage done to the women. That prompted my letter of resignation.
There you have it. 888-729-3776. 888-SAY-ESPN. Legal analyst Ryan Smith will be on with us at the top of hour number 2 to discuss this matter more in depth. Obviously, he's incredibly passionate about it, as it would any human being covering this story be. Considering the egregious acts that have reportedly taken place. I shouldn't even say reportedly anymore. Larry Nassar has been convicted. He is going to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. A president has resigned. An athletic director has retired. And the faces of the football and the basketball program, which essentially means the faces of the universities, are under fire as we speak. Mark D'Antonio, Michigan State head football coach. He did refute outside the lines reports. Listen to what he had to say.
I'm here tonight to say that any accusations of my handling of any complaints of sexual assault individually are completely false. Every incident reported in that article was documented by either police or the Michigan State Title IX office.
Look at what he did, or listen to what he did when questions were broached about his potential resignation. Listen to this.
That is absolutely false. I'm here for Spartan Nation. I'm here for our football program and for my family. And to look the people in the eye who, I guess, instigated those reports. You know, when I found out about a sexual assault, I reported them immediately. That was as of last year's. So I don't want to walk out of here but I can't answer 150 questions. I want to thank you guys for your time. I thought it was important to come in and address this and look people in the eye. Thank you for your time.
Your phone calls in a minute. It's Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
To the phones we go right here in the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Let's go to Nathan in Jersey. You're live at Stephen A. Talk to me, Nathan.
Hey, boss. Thanks for taking the call.
Go
I
ahead,
appreciate
man.
it. Yeah, much like the banking crisis in 2008, I think a lot of these colleges are seen as too big to fail, and I reject that notion. I would love to get your take on this. If let's say everything, and the other day in court turns out to be true with Michigan State, they shut down the entire college, and you can't do it overnight. You can't shock the system. With students, you'll give them okay, you can either continue to get your credits and degree online or something, or we can have a system that transfers you to another college and will help you with that. Teachers, professors, here's your 3 years notice, this and that. We're not taking any more freshmen, and we are shutting down the entire school. I think that would send a message. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. That's what they deserve.
Well, listen, whoa. It would definitely shock the system. It would definitely have a profound impact, no doubt. But whether it's, and I'm just speaking hypothetically here because I don't know, women's basketball, gymnastics, sure, soccer, volleyball, wrestling. Let's just say for the sake of argument, there's a myriad of other programs that have absolutely nothing to do with this, who never did anything wrong. And students, particularly those in the state of Michigan, who absolutely love this institution and have nothing to do with it. What about them?
I totally get that, and that's why I don't think you can shut. I think you need to accommodate them in every way possible. I think you need to either give them a refund if they want, or a system where they can all their credits are transferable. They get their degree.
I gave you that analogy because they went to Michigan State for a reason. In other words, they could go to another institution. They always could. But what if they want to be there? They don't want to go anywhere else, and they had nothing to do with this. What then?
Sorry, look what happened to the university you went to, And
hold on, time out. Well, the reason I'm asking you that question, Nathan, what's wrong with sitting there? I'm not saying I agree with you or disagree with you because I think we need to find more evidence. But what I'm saying to you is, what's wrong with them saying the football program, the basketball program, and your gymnastics program is dead? Why does it have to be the whole damn institution?
Because it's not sending a message. It's a slap on the wrist.
Hold on. Did you just say that suspending a football program and a basketball program, considering the millions upon millions of dollars that they bringing along with the gymnastics program, did you just say that's not sending a message?
Stephen A., they were little girls. This is
Excuse me. I pointed to the evil where it was committed. Gymnastics is where it pertained to the little girl. With the football and basketball program, that's adults. But my point to you is young adults. But my point to you is, if hypothetically speaking, somebody said the football program, the basketball program, and the gymnastics program is done, how is that not enough?
Because I think that the college itself is an entity that happened under the umbrella of the college. If that's going on at that college, send a message that you can't have that in a
All
business.
right, did you feel that way about Penn State?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fair. No, that's fair. I don't agree with you in terms of how far you want to go, but that's fair, and your position is consistent, and I will not disrespect and dismiss that position, Nathan. I won't do it because it's fair.
And real quick, if I may, I think if that, let's say Penn State did get shut down completely. You're not telling me that other presidents of other major colleges go to athletic directors and say, this stops right now. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, but you know what, Nathan, I'm going to interrupt you by saying this. You know what the problem is with your argument? They could say this stops right now. But remember, Larry Nassar and this situation was going on for the last 20 years. So what if those folks go to the athletic director and say this stops now? You're still absolving stuff for years and years of things that took place. That's the point that I'm trying to make. You know how many universities you're going to have to do that to? I'm not sure I agree. I am sure. I don't agree with that. But I understand your point, and it is consistent, and I can respect it. Appreciate the call. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Home Insurance. Getting a quote is easier than ever before. Lots of stuff to get into with this particular subject. Hour number 2, I'm going to get into the Cavs and some of their issues as well, plus some Super Bowl talk. But not before I get to Ryan Smith, our legal analyst for ESPN. He's up next to talk about what's going on at Michigan State. Don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A., ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.